Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. At a lot of our public meetings, the amount of Corps of Engineers people sometimes outnumbers the amount of people from the public, but that didn't happen tonight, I could see, right? Okay, that's great. I'll be very brief. There's a detailed presentation that the Corps is going to make. Dan Caprioli, our project manager, will go through our process in much more detail than me. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. And just to spend a minute to tell you about what we're doing and why we're here. We are here because Congress authorized and appropriated a study for us to do. And it's just that. It's a planning study of the Walter Dam. The dam was built, I think, 60 years ago or so, something like that. And there's been a lot of changed conditions. The floodplain around it changed. The dam was built for flood control and then subsequently authorized for recreation. We want to back check to see how those purposes and authorized purposes are, how that's working out, what the level of flood protection that we have is, and so we have to answer the mail. So the money that Congress gave us, we have to do this feasibility report, send that back to Congress, and if there is a project that gets authorized, Congress will authorize that. So everything that we do is within a very strict process. So we can't do any of it without you, and we're just getting started. So this is the third month of a 36-month study. We don't have any identified problems, solutions, or any kind of recommendations at this point, and we can only do that with your input. So thanks everyone for being here. It's a very great partnership that we have with New York City and DRBC. Everything that the Corps does in a study is 50% federal and 50% non-federal, and our non-federal partners are here to speak as well tonight. The last thing I'll say is just a little bit of planning, Corps of Engineers jargon, and just to reassure everyone that we don't plan the way other agencies plan or private interests plan. We have federal objectives to meet, and so that every alternative that we look at has to meet 4 criteria, and those criteria are completeness, effectiveness, efficiency, and acceptability. So, and we don't even look at an alternative that doesn't meet all 4 of those criteria. So I just wanted to leave you with that, and ultimately, we can come out of this study with a win-win solution for everybody and all the stakeholders. So thanks for being here. Your participation is crucial for this, and really look forward to working with everyone in the next few years. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Great crowd. Thank you all for coming out. I think it shows the passion and everyone's interest tonight, so thank you. My name is Steve Tambini. Can you guys hear me in the back there? No? Let me try again. My name is Steve Tambini. I'm the Executive Director of the Delaware River Basin Commission, and the DRBC is one of the 2 non-federal sponsors. So I just want to spend a few minutes discussing with you why DRBC has interest in this project and why we're a non-federal sponsor. Before that, I would like to thank the Army Corps of Engineers Philadelphia District for undertaking the study and for allowing me a few minutes to discuss DRBC's interest. I'd especially like to thank all of you for coming out. It's critical that your comments, interests, and concerns be heard, and while the Corps has indicated that comments will be accepted throughout the study process, it's helpful to hear from interested parties as early as possible in the process, and as Pete said, this is very early in the process. It's also helpful to hear from elected officials that represent you. Just a little bit about DRBC. DRBC was formed in 1961, and we were given broad authority under federal and state laws to provide for the management and utilization of water resources of the Delaware Basin. I'm sure, as everyone knows, the Lehigh River, the Lehigh Valley, and the F.E.W Reservoir are located within the Delaware River Basin. The commissioners of the DRBC are the governors of the 4 basin states, including Governor Wolf right here in Pennsylvania. The DRBC commissioner for the federal government is the commander of the North Atlantic District of the Army Corps of Engineers, Major General Jeffrey Milhorn. In his role as a DRBC commissioner, General Milhorn actually represents all the federal agencies. Now, DRBC's responsibilities, as are outlined in the law that established the commission, include several things. It includes the management of water for diverse uses, many diverse uses, that include drinking water, sanitation, industry, recreation, and fisheries. We also have the responsibility to coordinate flood loss reduction, manage stream flow during drought conditions, help prevent excessive salinity in the estuary, and protect and improve water quality. We work with the public and stakeholders to attempt to meet and balance the diverse and competing needs for water resources throughout the basin. We also assist the parties to the 1954 Supreme Court decree by providing technical evaluation of different flow management options. Now, the intent of this core study is to determine if modifications to the F.E.W. dam structure or reservoir operations can be implemented to improve water supply, fisheries, recreation, and other objectives without adversely impacting congressionally authorized purposes for the reservoir, which are flood risk reduction and recreation. Now, the Commission is participating in this study as a non-federal sponsor for several reasons. Number one, the F.E.W. Reservoir is part of the DRBC Comprehensive Plan for the Delaware River Basin. Any modification to the structure or operation, any significant modification, would require Commission approval. DRBC is also responsible for the development and implementation of the drought management plans for the Delaware River Basin. There hasn't been a significant drought in a long time, but we have to plan if the next drought comes about. Any modification to flow management requirements and reservoir releases could impact those plans. As I mentioned earlier, DRBC has broad responsibility for managing diverse uses while protecting and improving the resource. Finally, as a study sponsor, DRBC is representing the 4 basin states that serve on the Commission. While DRBC does not speak on behalf of the Commonwealth, we're aware of their interests in this project. The Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, which I think is going to talk in a little bit, has expressed a goal to the Corps and to the DRBC for improved fisheries on the Lehigh River that may be facilitated by structural or operational improvements at F.E.W. In addition, the Commonwealth has interest regarding sustainable drought management for the Lehigh and downstream users on the Delaware. Millions of people in Pennsylvania and in this region rely upon the engineered management of a complex reservoir system to address low flow and drought conditions. The DRBC will continue to work with the Commonwealth and the DRBC commissioners to plan for and support a range of water resource interests during this study. In addition to our role as a non-federal sponsor in the core F.E.W. reevaluation study, the DRBC has initiated or requested several other water resource studies that look both at and beyond F.E.W. for potential solutions to these complex issues. The DRBC has a water supply planning study ongoing to examine water demands, water availability, and climate impacts throughout the basin with an early focus on the Lehigh River. The DRBC is currently publicly soliciting interest from engineering consultants for a wide-ranging study to examine the feasibility of additional water storage throughout the basin, not just here exclusively at F.E.W. And the DRBC has requested 2 other studies from the Army Corp. First, a study to look at optimizing storage in all the federal reservoirs in the basin, and second, a comprehensive flood mitigation study for the basin. Now, the purpose of today's meeting is to hear from interested stakeholders early in the process, as I said, and use your input to guide the F.E.W. reevaluation study. Now, I think you've heard this, but be advised that before any authorized use of the reservoir could change, recommendations that come out of the study must undergo additional review at multiple government levels and receive congressional approval. The DRBC does support the reevaluation study. We always should be willing to consider ways to optimize, ways to improve, and ways to balance multiple water needs. In addition, short-term weather patterns and longer-term climate patterns are changing, affecting the water cycle in the basin, and it's prudent to begin to evaluate and plan for the impacts the basin may experience in the future. DRBC also supports the existing uses of the reservoir and recognizes their value to this region and to the basin, and those uses should be protected. Finally, DRBC certainly supports the public input process. It's critical that the study team understand the water resource needs locally, right here in the Lehigh Valley, and we look forward to your comments and to your input. Thank you.
It's great to see everyone here tonight. Quite frankly, I wasn't expecting such a large turnout, but apparently there's quite a bit of interest in this project. So it was also nice to see some of the television stations having do interviews with me tonight that I grew up watching. I grew up on the other side of the Delaware in Sullivan County, New York. Grew up trout fishing on the Neversink River. And we figured out, probably when I was about 7, 8 years old, that Scranton was actually a lot closer than New York City, and the television stations over there came in a lot better, so we began watching the stations over there. I think WDAU actually broadcast the Yankees occasionally back then, before they became WYOU. So I'm glad I made that connection. And thanks for giving me a few minutes to speak at the beginning of tonight's meeting. I'm Deputy Commissioner for the Bureau of Water Supply at New York City Department of Environmental Protection, and I'm based in the Catskills in Sullivan County, about 20 miles north of where I grew up. I oversee roughly 1,000 employees who are responsible for the operation, maintenance, and protection of New York City's water supply system. Our 19 reservoirs provide water to about 9.6 million people, 8.6 million in New York City, and roughly 1 million living north of the city. My staff and I have long been involved in issues related to the Delaware River because our water system includes 3 reservoirs on the headwaters of the Delaware: Cannonsville, Papacton, and Neversink reservoirs. In a few minutes, I will talk about how we operate these 3 reservoirs to meet multiple objectives aside from the primary mission of providing the water that sustains New York City. I want to start tonight by dispelling some myths about New York City's involvement in the study and the future operations at F.E.W Reservoir. My colleagues and I, like I mentioned at the start, have been surprised, and I guess we shouldn't have been surprised. I mean, this is your area, this is the state of Pennsylvania, and this is a reservoir that affects every individual in this room. New York City, an entity way to the east, a big one coming in here and having our name up front, certainly I understand the cause for concern. But we've read the newspapers, we've seen what's been written, and we think it's an opportunity for us to set the record straight of why we're here. I mean, we're not interested in taking drinking water out of F.E. Walter. We're not interested in directing the operations or purchasing space or ending recreation releases that support tourism and the local economy. I understand the cold water fisheries. I understand the whitewater rafting. People's lives are around there. Livelihoods are affected. And when someone starts talking about things that could possibly impact livelihoods, that gets personal. And that gets people out here tonight to hear what's really going on.
Yeah, we're worried that you're here at all. Okay?
What's that?
We're worried that you're here at all.
Absolutely, and I understand that 100%.
And we all are very, very concerned.
Okay, so let me get through my remarks. I think there'll be opportunities for comments by the public. So, New York City is not interested in using F.E. Walter Reservoir for drinking water, nor do we want to purchase space in the reservoir. We have plenty of water in the reservoirs that we own and operate to stay in New York City for many decades into the future. And trust me when I say that operating and maintaining 19 reservoirs has given me much of my gray hair. I'm really not interested in looking to get a 20th reservoir. It was also written last week that New York City is using more water, more and more water. The fact is that New York City water use peaked at 1.6 billion gallons a day in 1979. And the city's taken a lot of steps to reduce water use per capita, and we're down 35% since 1990. Today, instead of using 1.6 billion gallons a day, we use 1.1 billion gallons, even though there are 1.5 million people more on the system. And there's a chart in the back that shows how New York City's demand has changed since the 1970s. And this is a result of actually implementing universal water metering in people's homes, leak detection systems, and also water efficient fixtures. In February 1996, there was an episode of Seinfeld where they were changing out shower heads, and Kramer wasn't able to get his hair washed properly, so he went to the underground to replace the shower head. That actually was done at the time New York City had shower head replacements going on, so it was actually based on a program that we were doing back in the 1990s. I also read last week, did anyone ever see Seinfeld? Yes. Okay, good. Anyone ever see that episode? Okay, good. I also read last week that New York City wants to reduce recreation releases that drive the whitewater industry and other tourism businesses. That's not true. And in fact, we think this analysis by the Corps of Engineers might find ways to enhance those releases and improve local fisheries while sustaining F.E. Walter's core mission of flood control. Lastly, New York City, although New York City and the Delaware River Basin Commission have shared ideas with the Army Corp of Engineers regarding the scope, neither is in control of this study by any measure. The Army Corps of Engineers is leading this study to help answer questions about future flow management opportunities identified by the states of Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and New York City. This analysis was also approved by an act of Congress. Each of those parties, along with all of you, have an interest in periodically examining water resources throughout the Delaware Basin to ensure they are being used properly and flexibly to meet the many challenges that our communities and ecosystems face now and in the future. So what do we believe this study should focus on? Primarily, we think this study by the Army Corps of Engineers should center on protecting the estuary and lower basin during times of severe drought. As the climate changes and ocean levels continue to rise, we know that salt water from the Atlantic will push farther north into the Delaware River. During droughts, the intrusion of salt water from the ocean, known as the salt front, could stress natural ecosystems and put drinking water supplies at risk. Currently, New York City's reservoirs on the Delaware, which are located about 200 miles to the north of the salt front, bear much of the responsibility for pushing back salt water toward the ocean during times of drought. This would be done by operating large valves at our reservoirs and sending billions of gallons of water into the river. The travel time from our reservoirs to the lower river is roughly 5 to 6 days. Recent modeling by our own staff, which has been shared with DRBC and others, suggests that fighting the salt front with our reservoirs alone is not an efficient use of water, especially for the upper basin, and that water from our reservoirs alone might not be enough to get the job done in the longest, most severe droughts. So a group of scientists and river managers from the 4 states and New York City, with significant support from DRBC, got together a few years ago and agreed to study whether additional reservoirs in the basins could contribute water to the river during these most dire droughts, when the health of our ecosystems and viability of water supplies are really at stake. During those discussions, a fresh look at F.E. Walter Reservoir emerged as something that made sense. Because F.E. Walter Reservoir is closer to the salt front, its waters, combined with releases from other reservoirs, including those owned by New York City, could help more efficiently and effectively push that salt water back towards the ocean. So we thought there was an opportunity that made sense to explore. That is the central question of this study, we believe, and you're here to learn about tonight. In technical jargon, the parties want to understand F.E. Walter, if F.E. Walter can provide low flow augmentation to the Delaware River, is really another way of saying, can the reservoir help protect the lower river in times of drought? It's also worth noting that this type of analysis for F.E. Walter Reservoir has been contemplated since the severe drought of the 1960s, the severe drought of the 1960s, which was the drought of record for the region. After that, in the drought of the 1980s, the states and the cities signed something known as the Good Faith Agreement, which was essentially an agreement among river managers to examine options that could be used to help fight droughts in the future. The potential use of F.E. Walter releases were looked at then, and it was at the top of the list. And today we're actually going back to take another look at that. Importantly, I want to stress that this study needs to be an honest one. The Corps of Engineers will absolutely examine the outcomes of a wide range of structural and non-structural options. The outcomes 100% absolutely need to be based on sound science and not the desires of New York City or any other party. The study must account for the needs of all stakeholder groups, including people who live in and around the floodplains below the dam, those who rely on the reservoir for tourism, recreation, commerce, and communities that might benefit from additional protection during future droughts. Along the way, and this is just my personal opinion, I think the study is likely to find simple ways to enhance the benefit that the people in the Lehigh Valley already enjoy from the reservoir. I think the Corps of Engineers might find ways to manage the reservoir differently to improve fisheries and boating without compromising the core mission of flood protection. My opinion is based on recent changes that we at New York City have made in the operation of our reservoirs on the Delaware River. As I mentioned, our reservoirs are drinking water reservoirs, and their primary goal is to provide reliable quantity of clean, unfiltered drinking water to New York City. Until about 20 years ago, they were operated with that mission and that mission alone. My predecessors, who operated the water supply, were taught to keep the reservoirs as full as possible for as long as possible. We essentially operated them to fill and spill as often as we could, and relatively little attention was paid to other interests or stakeholders or management options. That's not the case now. Thanks to dozens of river gauges, modern runoff forecasts, snow measurement equipment, computer models that can process massive amounts of data, we now operate our reservoirs to support the cold water fishery of the upper Delaware River, increase the flood attenuation that our dams already provide, and carry out our primary mission of supplying drinking water. Instead of filling and spilling our reservoirs, we now meticulously examine the amount of water coming into the system and proactively release water downstream with the goal of filling but not spilling our reservoirs by June 1st, which is the start of the water year. This management strategy results in larger downstream releases throughout the course of a typical year, which is great for the cold water fishery, the businesses that depend on it, and the natural ecology of the river. Just last week, I looked at some statistics from 2019 that really underscored this change. Last year, we sent 208 billion gallons of water to New York City from our Delaware reservoirs, but we proactively released downstream 293 billion gallons of water from those reservoirs as a result of the change in operating philosophy. In addition, the city now operates the reservoirs according to storage targets that encourage us to keep them 80 to 90% full for much of the year. While reservoirs are not flood control reservoirs, this additional space allows them to capture more melting snow and falling rain in the spring and increases the flood attenuation that our dams already provide. I can't understate or overstate how differently we operate the reservoirs now to 20 years ago. If my predecessors knew that I was purposely releasing drinking water downstream to improve the fishing and flood attenuation, they probably would roll over in their graves. Some of them might actually try to come back and fire me. The way we operate the reservoirs now would be considered crazy as recently as into the 1990s. But that is what we're talking about here, how we can use modern technology to our benefit, how can we be more flexible and meet the needs of more people, how can we counter the effects of climate change that we are seeing already and plan for the ones that will come in the future. We use science to guide the operational changes to the New York City reservoir system. We think it can be done at other reservoirs throughout the Delaware Basin. So to wrap this up, New York City is not interested in purchasing drinking water from F.E.W. Reservoir, nor are we interested in having any control over the reservoir. We believe the study could benefit the entire Delaware River Basin, but especially the folks in the lower basin who will face more numerous and difficult challenges as sea level rise continues and climate change evolves. And the outcomes of the study must be driven by sound, objective science with an eye toward benefits for everyone who has a stake in the operation of this reservoir. This is not about what's best for New York City, it is about what's best for the Delaware River and the people who depend on it. I want to thank you for listening to me ramble, and I did ramble a bit. My staff and I will be here all night. We look forward to meeting many of you individually and answering questions. And if you think it would be helpful for us to come back and talk with your chambers of commerce groups, your fishing, boating groups, or other organizations, please don't hesitate to ask. We're willing to come down and talk to anyone. Thank you. All right.
Okay, so I don't want to cut into the public's time to actually comment on this study, so I'm going to go through these slides really quickly because I think you're really here to hear New York City's position and why they're interested in this study. So you've heard that. Hopefully you take that to heart. They speak the truth as far as I've seen. That's what they're interested in. I haven't seen any underlying motives here, so you don't need to be suspicious of anything else going on. I think the idea of storing water for water supply in Walter and piping it across to New York City is kind of crazy. So quite frankly, I don't know if that could even be done. But it is what it is. We were asked to do this study, so if you could just proceed to the first slide. A little bit of history about how we got to where we are today. It's not moving. There we go. Okay. So the F.E.W. Dam was actually authorized by the 1946 Flood Control Act and completed in 1961. So it's been there for quite a long time. It's prevented $233 million in flood damages since then. So it's doing its job. The main purpose of the dam was for flood control. In 1985, the Army Corp of Engineers actually looked at an analysis of the additional demands on the reservoir, including New York City's interests back then, as well as drought storage and recreation. And at that time actually recommended a 30-foot elevation of the dam, and back then it was going to cost $100 million, and that was basically the end of that, because no one could come up with that kind of money, and it was never authorized by Congress. But as an outcome of that study, recreation was added as a purpose, an authorized purpose to the dam. So that worked out really well for the recreation community. And since then, we've been working on a plan to how to implement that. I believe it took about a decade to come up with a good plan that benefits everyone that's interested in recreating upstream and downstream of the reservoir. And we also did a water quality modeling effort with our research center through 2000 and 2014, and Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission and the DCNR partnered on that study, looking at different ports on the tower to release colder water downstream and more frequently to support cold water fisheries and improve habitat downstream, and came up with some really good ideas out of that study. And then I say use acronyms, sorry, but the Water Resource Development Act of 2014 actually authorized temporary emergency drought storage at the request of DRBC, so that could help address the need for a pending drought in the area coming up as it was anticipated through DRBC studies. So we did based on that, and also skip it down to the second bullet, there was several requests for a study. First by the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, because they wanted to implement some of those fisheries improvement downstream. So in order to do that, we need to complete a study first before we can get authorized to construct anything by Congress. And also the DRBC asked for a formal study of the reservoir as well as the dam for emergency drought storage, as you know. And we also got a letter from the decree parties, which includes New York City and the forest bounding states, for the same interest, but more for low flow augmentation and keeping that salinity wedge downstream. So then we made several requests for funding for that study, and we finally got it in 2019, toward the end of 2019, and negotiated an agreement with DRBC and New York City DEP. And I believe the DRBC would have been the sponsor for this study if they had the resources to match our federal funding. As Pete mentioned, we need to have 50% match from a non-federal source. So, and that needed to come from another alternative source other than DRBC. So New York City was interested in us investigating this reservoir for the emergency drought storage as well. So they stepped up and provided that funding. So kudos to them for doing that. So we initiated the study scoping after we signed that agreement in September 25th, I think it was. And this whole, the authorization we got for this study basically says, Section 216 of the Flood Control Act 1970 says that we're authorized to look at existing projects that may have, if there's changed conditions over time, that warrants an additional investigation into the purposes of that project, or there's a way to optimize that project. And that's what we're following here, essentially, is there has been, our 2015 initial appraisal showed that there had been significant changes in the basin, additional development, as well as these outlying demands on the reservoir that we just listed. And so, move quickly. So we're gonna, basically outline several goals for the study to capture them sort of in a nutshell, but also to basically reiterate the interests that are out there that would like us to, investigate this further. So we're going to look at first and foremost, as the intent of this dam was back in 1961 when it was constructed, was for flood control. So the first thing we're going to look at is that providing that service, and we're going to look at that not only for today but for the next 50 years. We're going to look at potential development in the basin in the next 50 years. If there's additional need for flood control in the basin, can this reservoir meet those needs? Do we have enough storage right now to meet those needs? That's the first thing we're going to do. And then we're going to look at, the second authorized purpose is recreation. So we're going to look at, are there ways to improve that? We're not interested in, eliminating whitewater releases or reducing the plan. If anything, we're trying to improve that. We're looking for ways to optimize that. Can we store water longer, release water further throughout the year, provide additional releases that can, with changes in operations. Or if we have, maybe we do this flood study, we find out, oh, we have a little bit of extra room in there. Maybe we can release water longer than we could in the past. So we're gonna look at that. No, and again, as Pete mentioned, the study's just started, so everything's on the table right now. We're just gonna consider all the interest and look at all the potential solutions out there that might address those interests and look for win-wins where everyone can get something out of this. So then we're going to look at also, of course, as the DRC was interested in New York City, is emergency drought storage. And that's got a real potential for being able to do that. And that could be simply changing in the operation plan. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to need to store more water or raise the dam. It could mean we just need to manage it a little bit differently. So maybe we could release water further into the winter when there's more likelihood of drought, that we don't necessarily do that right now, and that might actually improve the fisheries as well and the habitat downstream. So, you know, win-win solutions, that's what we're going to be looking for. And next. Next slide. Yeah, sorry. Government equipment doesn't work very well. That's why it takes so long to do these studies. Yeah, unfortunately, we had to deal with that, so. Still not moving. So, you know, as Pete mentioned, we have limited time and limited money here. $3 million might sound like a lot of money, but it doesn't really go very far. You have to pay all the engineers and economists and biologists and everyone that needs to work on this study along the way. It doesn't go very far. All right, here we go. So, so this may be less interesting, but this is our formal study process that we are required to follow. We have to follow our policy on this. This has been determined over years and years of effort and troubleshooting and try to find out the best way to do these studies. So what we're going to do is a 6-step planning process. We're going to identify the problems and opportunities first. You know, not saying there's a problem out there, but we're really looking for the opportunities. So what are the opportunities? And that's really what we need from you all here tonight, is to help us identify those opportunities. What are some, and just not just the opportunities, but what measures or what alternatives should we be considering to be able to accomplish these goals? So your input is highly valuable in that process. So we really encourage you to provide your comments in writing and give us some more suggestions that we should consider and analyze further. So we'll take that and document all that information, and we'll look at the existing conditions in the dam and the basin, and the communities in the basin as well, and the economics and everything. And we'll forecast for the next 50 years what's going to happen in the future, additional development, additional recreational demand, you know. All that stuff's going to be looked at. And then we'll take that list of alternatives that we develop based on your input, and engineers and scientists as well in our agency and other agencies as well, to formulate the alternative plans that we'll then analyze in more detail. And then we will, it's just a way to say the same thing over and over, but evaluate the plans and compare the plans, just different ways to look at those from different angles and make sure you got the best plan when you come up to your selected plan in the end, what we call a tentatively selected plan, which we will present to you again around this fall. We should be at that point in time. We will hold another public meeting and present to you the tentatively selected plan. That is not the plan. It is just the general concept of what we feel is the best solution out there. So you get a chance to look at that. And after that meeting is held, we'll present that plan, tentatively selected plan, to our headquarters folks and to the other agencies as well. And we will release a draft report at that point in time, about a month after that meeting, not the public meeting, but the vertical team meeting. And you'll get your chance to give us formal comments on that draft report at that time as well. So, here's the schedule. Thanks, Steve. Keeping up. So that's basically the public meeting we'll have just before the tentatively selected plan. And then the draft report goes out around January 2021. And the next public meeting will most likely be, it says March there, but it's more likely to be around May, somewhere in the spring, before we have the agency decision milestone. So after we have the tentatively selected plan meeting, we're gonna refine that selected plan and optimize it and come up with the recommended plan. And all these are buzzwords we have to use for our policy. And at that point in time, the public will get another bite of it, take another look at it, and then we'll present that selected plan to our headquarters again around June, and then we'll submit the final report which also will be released for everyone to review. And then, as well as our Washington level formal reviews will be done at that time. And there's also something that's called independent external peer review. So it's a group of non-federal agents, non-federal entities, that basically, whoever's out there that are experts in the field will pay them to look at this again. So we have another set of eyes looking at this as well to make sure we got the right answer and we considered all the potential issues that might arise from our recommended plan or our solution. So to reiterate, your written comments are highly valuable. Please provide them by the end of the month if you can. We'll accept them throughout the study, but we really want you to help us, brainstorm and come up with different alternatives and measures that we should be considering right now. That's really, really important to get this thing going and make sure everyone has input in the process. Like I said, we'll have the public meetings between each decision point. So I've overrun a little bit, but we're happy to continue we're 7:05 now. We'll give you a full hour to make your comments. So, on average, we can get, 2 minutes per speaker. I don't know how many we have with the list. But do you want to introduce the first speaker? Okay.
Good evening. I'm a little disappointed. I was looking forward to the mic stand so I could do my best air guitar for y'all. Everyone in the back. So, do I get to carry it or have my selection?
Whatever works best.
There we go. All right. I'll speak clearly, hopefully. I love the microphones here. This is going to be fantastic. I'll keep my comments brief. I will probably violate the 2 minutes. Up on the screen, before I forget to say it, this is my contact information. Please don't be a stranger. Sorry, the other way? This way. Okay. Rock of Ages, where the guy licked the microphone, right? No one can hear me. Okay, 1 minute. That's even better. Thank you to New York City, to the RBC and the Army Corp for having us here to say a few comments. We appreciate the opportunity. We are very excited and pleased for this opportunity of this study. It brings with it possibilities to improve, enhance, and create opportunity that otherwise possibly wouldn't exist. And I say possibility anymore. All right. We are going to approach this with that glass is half full perspective. We're going to take this as a positive thing to happen. And we wish to offer our assistance to the study partners as we move through this study as it pertains to our expertise. Moving forward, the Fish and Boat Commission would like to take the holistic perspective as we go through the study. Certainly as a Commonwealth agency, we have interests throughout the Commonwealth. That includes the estuary, that includes the Delaware, and that certainly includes the Lehigh River. We see a critical need for quantifying how the Francis Walter operations, both the existing operations and potential alternatives, how they fit into the entire basin. That's the Delaware, that's the Lehigh, that's the Schuylkill, that's everything. How does these operations and how do alternative operations fit in with the larger picture, as well as how does the larger picture fit in with the Lehigh River? That's very critical to us. The other thing, the operations at Francis Walter have expanded well beyond their original capacity. We have a recreation operations plan that has been well received. Now, we've gone through a bunch of bumps to get there, but I think right now, people are very excited and pleased with the plan that we have in place that provides the opportunity that we currently have. Fish and Boat sees a great marriage between the fishing side and the whitewater side. And to be honest with you, there's no more sides. It's the same. It's recreation. And we're excited to have that. We see a need to document that that recreation. What is the current recreational use that's happening dependent on the dam? And more importantly, what is the anticipated benefits of recreation that can be improved upon or can be generated through changes in operations at Francis Walter? I think we need to document not only that recreational use, and it's more encompassing than just whitewater and fishing. It's also about trail use. It's about picnicking use at the project. It's about the Lehigh Gorge use, the state park. And we'd like to see, more importantly as well, if things change, how do we perceive the use to be increased or improved upon? And that will help us understand what we have and where we're going to go, potentially. Utility of the existing facilities through the recreational operations plan, we're at the limit. We reached the peak. I think it's fair to say that where we are now, we have tweaked out the recreational operations plan to the best that we can. We may be able to squeeze another drop out of it, but it'll be a small drop. This study offers a way to move beyond that. One of the limits for us is the loss of the cold water. With the bottom release out of the dam, for the trout fishing at least, or for cold water fisheries, and that's in lake or downriver, we'd like to see improvement of cold water storage. Right? Two things we desire. We desire to see a two-story fishery in the lake. We desire to see cold water fish or cool water fish, walleyes, trout, striped bass possibly, being improved upon in the lake. We also like to see a stable, consistent year-round trout fishery that could happen below the lake potentially. But we'd also like to see the us continue, the us being whitewater, being supported through all of this, right? It's fish and boat. To this end, we think the Lehigh Water Quality Model offers insight into those possibilities. And we'd just like to revisit some of those and see where they can take us. Yep. I actually have probably another 50 minutes if you really want. Let me say this, in conclusion, Francis Walter's not going to go anywhere, right? It's not going to go anywhere. Well, one of the things that Fish and Boat is we're very pragmatic. We'd like to maximize the best that we can for the facilities that we have and potential opportunities that changes to those facilities will offer. All right? These are alternatives. This is a great moment. We can look into the future and say, is this possible? Can we do this? If we can put a man on the moon, we can certainly do something at Francis Walter. Right? Very positive, or at least I am. I'm invested in it. Sorry, I'm getting overwhelmed. I love Francis Walter. I've been involved with it, and I'd like to see it move forward for you in directions that everybody is agreeable with. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me. State Representative Doyle Heffley. I represent the 122nd District, Carbon County, which is pretty much fully encompassed in the footprint of the DRBC, or the Delaware River. While Pennsylvania makes up 50% of the land mass, in the DRBC, it is interesting that we only have about 20% of the representation on the DRBC. As a legislator from this area, I think it's prudent that we stand up for the voices of Pennsylvanians in this discussion. While New York City has a lot of resources and revenue and wants to look at a study, I think we need to ensure that any study is going to prioritize the issues that we're seeing here in Carbon County. Whitewater recreation and fishing opportunities are important. Any changes or enhancements to that dam can have devastating effects both upstream and downstream. The only way you're going to get a cold water fishery in the Lehigh is if there's enhancements to the dam where they can store more water. It can't be done with the current water pool in there, as the conversations I've had with DEP. So when you do that, you then increase the water level. Now you affect the wetlands and all the tributaries that feed into that, and it could be devastating to any business or homeowner that just has a small project or needs to get a permit. The same with downstream. All your municipalities that discharge into the Lehigh or its tributaries will see a huge financial burden to upgrade systems to meet the standards of that cold water estuary. So I think it's important that all these things are considered in the scoping, and if there's going to be money spent by entities to increase the dam, then there also needs to be resources available to those downstream and upstream impacts to those communities. Tourism is the #1 industry in Carbon County. We have 3 great ski resorts. By the way, ski resorts pay a fee to the DRBC for the water they extract to make snow. That's also something that you should be aware of. Anything that we do here, the DRBC, the Army Corp has to sign off on, and I want to make sure that we are represented at the table, that the PA Fish and Boat Commission The governor and the DEP has the interest of the residents of Pennsylvania, so that we get the full 20% of our representation on the DRBC. While New York State and New Jersey have not been good neighbors when it comes to energy production and economic growth in Pennsylvania, they certainly seem to want to have their interest in our water supply, and I think we need to hold them to their feet. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm State Senator Lisa Baker of the 20th Senatorial District. I represent parts of Luzerne and Susquehanna counties and all of Wyoming, Wayne, and Pike counties. And so what I would like to say on behalf of Senator Yudichak, who is not able to be here, working with Representative Heffley, we intend as a delegation to submit a formal letter about the concerns we hear that you are going to express later. But from a broader perspective, I represent many landowners in the upper Delaware. And those individuals, this plan, I believe, has a larger region than just what we're talking about with the Francis Walter Dam and the Lehigh. We have to look at the health and well-being of the entire region, the upper Delaware, Lake Wallenpaupack, and the lake. We also need to have assurances that, as we know and have read stories, we heard how many gallons of water goes into New York City each and every day. Many of my constituents want to know that water is not being wasted in New York because of poor infrastructure. Will the Corps review, as part of this process, the infiltration problems in the city? Will the Corps conduct a thorough, not only environmental, but economic assessment and community impact assessment on what the releases of water will do to the streams, the communities, the activities, and the feeder waterways of both the upper Delaware and the Lehigh combined? This has to be looked at holistically. What is the long-range contingency plan if water is released and then a drought happens here in our region? Who helps counter our water emergency? And who will be submitting questions, concerns in the future? We want to know that once a plan is put in place, will the non-federal match funders, the DRBC or the City of New York, have any special rights to override the recommendations made in that plan? So I thank you all for being here. I look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you, Lisa. Wayne Notstein, Carbon County Board of Commissioners, along with Commissioner Lukasiewicz, Commissioner Honor, and we are greatly concerned about the economic impact and the possible loss of jobs and tourism in Carbon County. Our whitewater outfitters alone employ between 1,300 and 1,400 full-time, part-time employees in this summer. I know you are, and I'm so happy to see so many people, so many concerned citizens here. And we are concerned with the future needs of Carbon counties and businesses, the tax revenues we could possibly lose, the jobs. Carbon County is a growing county. If we allow our water resources to be taken away from us, what other resources will outsiders try to take away from our businesses and our residents? The trails along the Delaware, Lehigh, going through Carbon County, 156 miles, is affected by the river. We have the Appalachian Trail. We have Weatherly Borough, Palmerton Borough, East Penn Township working on connector trails to connect their communities for economic development. Think about all the people that come to Carbon County through rail tours, the bed and breakfasts, the hotels, the restaurants, the fishing, and all the other businesses that we have in Carbon County. So we are deeply concerned with the future of water in Carbon County. I ask that you keep not only our elected officials, but our residents fully informed of what is going on along this route. Thank you.
Good evening. The Carbon County Comprehensive Plan and Greenway Plans are our guide to the use and protection of Carbon County's most valuable natural resources. The Lehigh River stands second to none as a mover, an energizer in our quality of life and our economic development. So much so that the Carbon County Comprehensive Plan and Greenway plans mention the Lehigh River 132 times. The Lehigh River matters to us collectively as Carbon County's elected officials to be your voice at the table, and we thank the DRBC, New York City, and the courts for giving us the opportunity to have a voice in this discussion.
Good evening. My name is Rocky Arner. I'm one of the county commissioners for Carbon also. The eastern part of Pennsylvania has a very efficient system from a stream starting in the north flowing to Philadelphia to keep the water out of Philadelphia. A lot of the areas here depend on the recreation for money, and I look at it this way. We want to try and get jobs into our area. As a manufacturer coming in here, they have wellness plans. We have the perfect thing. We have wellness, we have water. And if a manufacturer or a business comes to us and says, we would like to come here, but what would be my answer? I'm sorry, we gave our water away. So I think on behalf of the commissioners, we have two resolutions here from the past board, and we took over on Monday, and this is from our board. Our comments are, we want to keep our water. Thank you.
Hey, I'm so glad to see all you folks. I'm here representing Whitewater Challengers and the Lehigh River Outfitters Association. It has been a joy and an honor to live and work and play on and around the Lehigh River for 45 years now. It is such a special place. And I think the thing that I'm most concerned about and proud of is the recreation flow management plan that's in place now. I see a lot of old friends here from DCNR and Corps of Engineers and fishing clubs and boating clubs. We worked for a decade hammering out a plan that is nationally recognized by American Outdoors Association as one of the best public-private partnership arrangements in the country. And that's something we should all be very proud about. This plan works. It works for fishing, it works for boating. We've heard comments tonight to the effect that we're looking for win-win solutions where recreation can be enhanced. We've heard comments that we don't want to see a detriment to the plan or to recreation or to downstream water quality. I guess what I'm hoping to hear is an assurance that beyond just being a desire, that the study partners are committed to not studying alternatives that would jeopardize or diminish the recreational and water quality values of the Lehigh River. We understand that that's been articulated as a desire. We've yet to hear that those kinds of plans are off the table, and I think that's the question we need to keep asking. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. It is really cool to see this many people show up for this event. Thank you all for coming out. This is really neat. Awesome. Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, I'm pretty partial to the rafting industry. I'm here with Pocono Whitewater, and yeah, it's a huge part of my life. My family's been running trips on the Lehigh for generations. And I'm excited by the possibility for new things that could come out of this. I'm also very concerned about what could come out of it negatively. Like they said, it's very early in the process. So I think it's really important that everybody stay involved, stay with their eyes open, and watch what's going on so that we can continue to have a voice in this. You've heard plenty about the rafting industry, so I'm not going to talk about that necessarily. One of the issues that they talked about would be the salinity making its way up the river. This issue concerns me greatly, simply because it's not going anywhere. And I don't want to see, and I'm afraid of seeing, this industry wind up being a casualty of a continued approach towards this problem that involves them cutting more and more of the water out of here to try and fix this problem instead of dumping real resources, which is going to need to happen eventually, into fixing infrastructure and making this problem, soluble through other means. Because what we don't want to see is all of the communities surrounding that estuary getting bankrupted in an attempt to keep that status quo, when what we need to do is spend a lot of resources trying to fix that problem directly. Thank you.
First and foremost, thank you to everybody for making the trip out here tonight. As a community organizer, it's inspiring to see this many people show up for a particular issue, especially one that's near and dear to Trout Unlimited's heart. You know, Trout Unlimited in Pennsylvania, we have 14,000 members, spanning 49 chapters. A handful of them are here today. You know, our concern, I guess, you know, in this study is that, you know, we want to see the wild brown trout and other fisheries that exist below the dam improved. And we think that this study offers the opportunity to do that. We do wish that the member parties involved in the study consider alterations to the dam to improve that. We also recognize that through coordination with Fish and Boat Commission, with the U.S. Army Corps, with the local angling community, and with the whitewater rafting community, we have created a fishery that is not just a secret anymore. It is a destination fishery, and we'd like to see that continue. We'd also like to see this study incorporate the Phase 1 and Phase 2 water quality studies that were completed in 2009 and 2013 as it moves forward. And we do wish that any alterations and any findings that are made through the study not affect other regional fisheries, especially the Upper Delaware River. We do hope that you will consider Trout Unlimited as a partner as you move through this process over the next 33 months. We're happy to provide any input on the economic and ecological impacts that can and might happen from any alterations. And I certainly hope to see everybody in this room at any other meetings in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. The Army Corps, I'm Jerry McElward. I run Lehigh, the Lehigh Outdoor Center, Jim Thorpe River Adventures, and the Northeast PA High School. I also am one of the people in the Friends of Lehigh River group. And I'd like to thank the Army Corps for a long-standing, good relationship with both fisheries and downstream recreationists. I think that partnership with the DRBC and with PA Fish and Boat and with DCNR has come up with a really fine compromise over many years of this flow management plan as it exists. Mr. Tambini, right? Is he here? That's you, okay. Mr. Tambini and Mr. Rush, they knew what they were walking into today, I'm sure, so hats off to them for coming up and standing before a crowd like this. And I appreciate all that you guys do. What we would like to see, we heard a lot from Mr. Tambini, or some about the interconnectedness of the Delaware Basin. And that is without a doubt, nor do any of the outfitters, the Friends of the Lehigh River, want to stand in the way of that. I would, however, ask them to consider the interconnectedness of this room. And how many of you consider yourself interconnected enough that the outcome of this from a downstream recreation matters to you? Would you slowly and respectfully stand? Put your hands up in the back. Thank you. We all love the Lehigh. What I would like to suggest is that we all stay engaged. This is the beginning of the process. There's milestone meetings coming up. There are things, as we understand it, the Army Corps they have a very specific methodology for doing this. It's very open. We have lots of chances along the way to learn and know what these are. As a group, and as certainly the people who make their private time and their professional time on the Lehigh River using this well-working flow management plan, we would like to consider, I would like to hear some type of a guarantee or wording that protects the flow management plan as it now exists. That could persevere through a variety of modifications and improvements, but the we heard the term earlier, non-structural improvement. That is probably the one that worries me and my fellow outfitters the most. In that, if water is sequestered in the pool for any reason at this time, at this pool elevation, for anything other than downstream recreation and the fisheries in the flow management plan, that water which is stored comes directly from the existing 1370 pool that we have grown used to achieving in the beginning of the year. So I suppose many of us in this room would be very happy if we heard some assurances that that was intact and fairly unassailable. And again, I thank everybody for coming out in the room. I thank Army Corps. It's been a very long, good working relationship. And thank you to New York and the DRBC for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Mark Zakutansky. For those of you who don't know me, I'm here as the official representative of the Appalachian Mountain Club, where I serve as our Director of Conservation Policy Engagement. I want to thank the study sponsors primarily for being here, for making the drive, for being in front of this crowd, for offering the explanation of why they wanted to initiate this study. The Appalachian Mountain Club is the nation's oldest conservation and recreation organization with a charitable mission of connecting people to the outdoors. How could we not be here today? We've partnered for many years with the Army Corps and many stakeholders to develop the existing recreation flow management plan. We thank all the agencies and partners who have worked to make this recreation plan a reality. We've already heard from stakeholders that understandably want to ensure that this study does not evaluate any alternatives that may negatively impact existing downstream recreation, including paddling and fishing. AMC wholeheartedly agrees. AMC paddlers have been enjoying the Lehigh River for more than 50 years before they even knew how to catch eddies, honestly. I'd like to ask the study sponsors and the study team to recognize that today's meeting shows just a fraction of the level of public interest around this topic. Interest is high in part because information related to the study and its goals has been lacking. The fact sheets, FAQ, and other materials prepared by Army Corps are simply too vague to assist the public in responding in a meaningful way and helpful manner during the scoping process. We only just got to see the study goals this evening in the PowerPoint that marginally worked. A study of this size should follow the National Environmental Policy Act, under which a formal scoping document would be released and a notice of intent to initiate an environmental impact statement would be filed in the Federal Register at the beginning of the process, not next fall. Those steps have not been taken. To flash forward, I'd like to ask the study sponsors and the study team to issue a scoping document to follow the National Environmental Policy Act throughout the study beginning immediately. And finally, I'd like to thank the study sponsors for attending the public meeting tonight. We thank the study team for their hard work to date and the work ahead. And most importantly, I'd like to thank the elected officials here today, the stakeholders, and the many members of the public for engaging in this study and ensuring that there is no damage caused to recreation or the environment after the study is complete. Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Sabello. I'm not speaking on any organizations up here tonight. I am speaking as a private citizen who uses the Francis Walter daily. When I was in my early 20s, I moved to the Outer Banks, had a beautiful beach house, and it wasn't for me. I moved back up to these mountains, and in fact, I bought a house 10 minutes from the Francis Walter because I love it so much. And thank you for doing this study, and I hope we could make it better, but New York, you can see our concern is you are not a friendly neighbor. In fact, you dump millions of pounds of raw sewage into our river basin and tell us it will be okay, it will dilute by the time it gets down here. So you can see all of our concerns with us potentially losing our Francis Walter, which is so important, not only to everybody who makes a living on this water, but to people like me who go there to fish and take home that catch to eat at night. So please, just don't sell us out. Listen to what we have to say, and we're not going away. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I am Amber Briner. I'm the president of the Carbon County Community Foundation. Our mission is to improve the quality of life for the residents of Carbon County now and forever. I'm here tonight because our board of directors is concerned that the outcome of this study may negatively impact our quality of life and our economy. We created a petition to ask community members from throughout the region to sign to express that they share these concerns and join us in support of the advocacy work of the Friends of the Lehigh River. As of today at 4 o'clock, we had 1,750 unique signatures on that petition. It was in response to the simple statement that any revisions to the flow management plan must continue to prioritize the needs of the people in the immediate region of the Lehigh River. I think we can all get behind that. 500 of those people gave thoughtful comments, and I've distilled down a few of those that stand out to me, and I want to share them with you. I want to use my time to amplify the voices of those 1,750 people that responded to that petition. First off, to echo Brandon Fogel's concern, a woman named Selene from Wilkes-Barre said, "It seems a more permanent solution is needed at some point as the saltwater front will increase further. Where will they look for their resources next after they continue to put a Band-Aid on this problem?" Lynn Shupp of Palmerton says, "We're proud of where we live and are looking for it to grow into an even better place to live. A good portion of our incomes in this area come through our natural resources, and we cannot afford to give that away." My friend Doug Makofka gave my favorite quote, I think. "Carbon and surrounding counties love their river. There's been much invested in bringing it back from when it ran black and orange with coal mine effluents. We're willing to be an eager partner in managing this watershed for the greater good, but we're not going to destroy the gains that have been made on the Lehigh for the benefit of New York City or anyone else." And lastly, I'll share a quote from Kate O'Handley, who's from Harrisburg. I had people from all over the country actually responding to this. "The people in the Lehigh Valley deserve the healthy economy they've worked to achieve. Changing dam control would be devastating for the entire area. Furthermore, people from all over should be able to continue to come and enjoy this wonderful recreation area supported by the Lehigh River and scheduled releases." Thank you, and thank you everybody for showing up tonight. Let's keep the conversation going.
Good evening. My name is John Masowski. I sit on the board of directors of the Lehigh Cold Water Fishery Alliance. You will hear the Alliance's public comment later. Tonight, right now, I'm advocating for a spirit of cooperation. I find all this very exciting, but also very complicated. I don't believe there is one person in this room that fully understands all the complexities of this project. And so we need each other and all the gifts and talents of each person in this room for its success. I honestly believe that every person in this room has something valuable to offer to its success. So we need to build community around this project in a spirit of cooperation. We can't expect to agree all the time, but we need to hear each other's point of view to complement or correct our own point of view. And because we may disagree, we need to focus on building relationships and to focus on building trust. We need to practice the golden rule: active and respectful listening, speaking honestly, give and take, keeping an open mind, exercising care for another's point of view, and giving others the opportunity to speak and respond. And we need to engage in dialogue rather than discourse. Let's not follow the current trend of divisiveness that has gripped our country today. Let us be an example of a spirit of cooperation. It'll mean the difference between success and failure. Thank God for the Lehigh River, and God bless America. And now, I'd like, in the spirit of cooperation, if we could, let's all stand and pledge allegiance to our flag.
Here's a flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and especially to the veterans who are among the audience tonight. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a special welcome to all the veterans who may be in the audience tonight. My name is John McClanahan, and I'm speaking as a volunteer with Team River Runner. Team River Runner is a national organization of local chapters who provide opportunities for wounded veterans to heal through participation in paddle sports. The whitewater recreation available on the Lehigh River is a vital resource, not only to our chapters in Pennsylvania, but also chapters in Maryland, Virginia, and beyond. The current flow plan of whitewater releases allows us to make plans in advance for various programs and clinics that we conduct throughout the year. We have helped many wounded veterans on a path to recovery. We hope to be able to utilize what is a very unique resource, the Lehigh River, for many years to come. Thank you.
All right, well, first off, Mike Stanislaw with the Lehigh Cold Water Fishery Alliance. When these flow plans started to get developed 20 years ago, there's maybe 20 people in the room, and now we've got, I don't know, 500 in this room, which is incredible. So that's a true testament to what this mission and this operation of this dam with the Army Corps of Engineers as a really good, successful partner has done to this community, for people that fish, for people that boat, for people that walk along this river, people that live in this community that are proud to call this their home. When they say the word Lehigh River, it's not because, oh, that mess of an orange AMD sludge-filled, drainage. No, it's something to be absolutely proud of, and that's why everybody's here. Everybody's here for something specific and, inside them, and they're proud, and they want to see the success of this river. So we promise to do this, because I'm just going to go right to the point of what we do and what we want out of this study. So Lehigh Cold Water Fishery Alliance has been here since 2005. And here's what we want to have out of this study. And others have said similar things, and we echo those as well. So the study needs to build upon the results of the Lehigh Water Quality Study from 2014. Those two studies together by the Army Corps of Engineers show the potential of what this can go. We've talked about it's great for people, to boat, and there is fishing and wild trout in this river today, but it can be incredibly better. We want to examine changes to the actual structure to better utilize Francis Walter for this community and these flows to enhance the cold water system and recreation. We want to research economic value that it brings to the community. Others have said that, and we also. And then above all, no net loss. Not only does this apply to making the current 2019 recreational and fishery enhancement flows baseline, not, well, let's see if we can get there and then go from there, baseline, in any future reauthorizations, we advocate no net loss for any other parts of the Delaware River Basin. And you've heard some references, Trout Unlimited and others, talking about the upper Delaware River Basin system, which is under the DRBC and the New York City's control. That's one of the top 5 trout waters in this country. And it is successful, and it is flourishing. Now, it hasn't been easy. I'm not going to say that it's been a smooth sail, but it's there, and it's improving. And we want to see that here, and the potential for the Lehigh to get that is here. And I thank everybody for showing up. It is awesome. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm gonna say why this building's packed. I'm gonna bring out the elephant in the room. New York City's involvement in this project. Am I right or wrong? Am I right or wrong? That's why you have 500 people in this room tonight, because of New York City's involvement. They can sit there and say, we don't have no say, we don't. Follow the money. If you follow the money, you will find out what's going on. If New York has no say, your taxpayers should be on your back for spending taxpayers' money for no say. That's all I'm going to say. God bless America.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Anita Collins. I'm president of the board of Lehigh Gap Nature Center. With me is Chad Schwartz, one of our new co-directors. I'm not surprised this room is packed. The Lehigh Gap Nature Center occupies 760 acres along the Lehigh River in Lehigh and Carbon counties, right where the Kittatinny and the Appalachian Trail cross the river. Our mission is conservation, education, 10,000 students last year, recreation, and research related to this area of Lehigh and Carbon counties. Since 2003, we have successfully reestablished thriving ecosystems in an area previously denuded by contamination from the New Jersey zinc plant in Palmerton. We're currently one of 23 nature centers in the Alliance for Watershed Education, which covers the Delaware and Lehigh watersheds, funded by the William Penn Foundation. We all know that the Lehigh River was badly polluted, primarily as a result of coal mining, and when the coal was less valuable, they left us in the area to wither and live with the scars. Many people worked to clean up the river and turn it into a valuable resource, as we have heard tonight, for both ecosystem services to the public and recreational activities. There's also an untold personal value from living in a clean, natural environment. Our concerns lie with how changes in the use of water from the Francis E. Walter Dam will impact the Lehigh and Delaware rivers. We know that changes in water flow can potentially disturb the river ecosystems as well as the ecosystems along the river. Of major interest to us is also how this might change the salt line in the Delaware River. We are certainly aware of the critical flood control measures provided by the dam and the economic benefits to this area from a clean, well-flowing river. Chad and I are here to understand the reevaluation study and the possible future changes being considered so that we can follow closely what is going on. Clean, usable water is a dwindling resource for the entire natural world, including the human population, and deserves very careful management for all. Thank you.
My name, known only to my deceased mother and father, spoken for the first time to anyone else, is Francis Xavier Karen Robert Barnes. I am here to speak on behalf of justice. I've recently been advised that there may be a provision in the U.S. ACE feasibility study for the reservation of 65 feet of water behind the Francis Walter Dam. I have been a traveler on the Lehigh since 1970. I expect to travel its waters again this summer and beyond. Since 1976, I have worked on the Lehigh as a river guide, 44 years without interruption. The Lehigh is timeless, but it's always new every time I put my foot in it. From the earliest days of European settlement, the Lehigh has combined to foster economic growth and stability. The Lehigh provided a route in its water and canal to operate the Delaware and Lehigh Canal and bring economic activity to this area and coal and produce to Philadelphia and beyond. The Lehigh brought hard cash and industry and farm produce to the cities. I work professionally in community development, and as I float by, I see wonderful old communities filled with late 19th century homes, perched on hillsides, crooked streets, small shops, and old cemeteries filled with those on whose shoulders we stand. In recent years, I have noticed many changes, particularly in Jim Thorpe. In the 1970s, you could almost take a nap in front of the old railroad station and not be disturbed. It was a played-out mining town, lost at finding a future and fading into history. Jim Thorpe is now a thriving town built in part by the Lehigh River. And I hope that continues. As a native of Pennsylvania, it is my wish that there can be found other options than creating a 65-foot deep water closet. This will create little public benefit and great public damage. I thank you for your attention.
Good evening, and a belated Happy New Year to all. My name is Eric Coco. We have property in Penn Lake area, and I just wanted to have a few comments delivered, not to the public. You seem well-founded, well-grounded, well-informed, but to these gentlemen in three parts. Part one, to the Basin Committee, DBC. Sir, thank you for everything you guys do, but unfortunately, I don't envy you one bit. You are now under the scrutiny such as I've never seen before, okay? Good luck to you, sir. But in closing to that, there is some expressions that are used in the medical term, no matter what is decided, no matter what the study concludes, no matter what you want to change, a little bit of this taken away to benefit a little bit of that, maybe you should consider first do no harm. And to that, you move forward. To the Corps of Engineers, sir, good evening, okay? You have a history of great accomplishments. And like any government agency, not everything goes well, but you guys have done a great job across America since I've been alive. Thank you for that. I hope you consider even doing more when it concerns the river and the dam in question, okay? Please do a good job for us. We are all counting on that, okay? We don't do what you do. We trust you, and please do not do anything to belay that trust. That's all I ask. But there is one thing. I just noticed that during the dissertations that were presented, that most studies are goal-oriented. You have a goal and you have a study. To this, I looked at what you presented and it was very well done, very artfully done. I'm not too sure of all the goals that you guys are really going to, with or without New York City. Before the study continues, apparently goalless, ask yourself, should we continue? Think these people, these good people, myself, even you, deserve a clear-cut path of what you're trying to accomplish here. What is the good and what is the bad of the results of a lot of variables? That is not unfair to ask. These guys and women here today, they have a fiduciary interest, of course. They also have a conservative issue, and I agree with it. We were terrible stewards of this planet up until recently. Let's not continue doing that, okay? Let's go forward. So with that, I say, please, again, do a good job. To the guy from New York, good evening, sir, okay? That's probably the only one you're going to get tonight, but I think that the nemesis with your office I have met. It is called your website. And on your website, it did show structural interfaces that were quite not very good. In other words, the leaks that you have in your infrastructure coming back on there, they quoted 37.5 million gallons of leakage or something like that. The question is, the numbers aren't important. This is, if that amounts are to be considered for repair, that will definitely, if that's a per day average, by the way, 37.5 million, that's where I got the number from. I wasn't born in this world knowing this. That's going to be significant in the flow considerations when you look at the fluidics of what you're trying to do to stop this brackish water from coming inland. Unfortunately, those projects, by your own website's admission, are going to be addressed, taken care of, and New York is going to be even in better infrastructure sense than they are now. But that's not even going to be completed until after your study is done. So my question to you is, consider it as a possible important element of your study. And should your study be put off maybe, or at least kludged a little bit to consider these things? That's kind of hard to say, hey, we're telling you how to live in your house, but we didn't clean up ours yet. That's kind of hard to say. The particulars are not now important. The sentiment is understood by these people. It has to be. How could you avoid us? Do you know what it takes to come to this meeting tonight? Do you tell me one person who doesn't have a better place to be? I rest my case. And I just want to say that you get a little chance to speak to people. I want to tell our veterans thank you for the service. I was an ROTC back at Wilkes University. I want to tell our first responders thanks, and those guys interface with you guys a lot. Drawing water, things like that. Water's water to everybody, and thanks for that service as well. But we should be a positive point of conversation throughout Pennsylvania. I'd like to see it maintain that, because that usually gets the best results. I don't think I have to tell you people this, but I am telling you, okay? That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time, and again, Happy New Year.
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Fantastic. I'm a PA resident that resides in Carbon County. I'm a former New Yorker from Ulster County, where many of New York City's current water supplies emanate. I'm also a daughter of the American Revolution, who's one generation removed from the loss of our family homestead in Eureka, New York, which coincidentally is part of Sullivan County, that which Mr. Rush referenced earlier. Due to a New York City acquisition of water supplies and creation of dams and reservoirs to serve their needs. Hundreds of years at that location, we lose our home in 2 weeks. I want to continue to bring to light that small towns and people often get lost in big city plans, literally in the case of my family. Carbon County alone stands to lose millions of dollars and jobs as a result of the initially proposed plans. Once again, small towns would be greatly affected for the big city. Since drought is of concern for New York City, I want to share when drought conditions presented themselves to local residents in my hometown in upstate New York. Not a thought was given to the locals at that time of need. In fact, roads by those water supplies were closed for access to the locals, and no water was released from the dams. If New York City wouldn't release water to native New Yorkers in our time of need that lived in those areas, not for drinking, but for other basic needs, what makes us believe that they will do that for Pennsylvania in our time of need? I'm also a whitewater rafting guide, one of many in this room, who every weekend from Memorial Day to Labor Day entertain thousands of New York City residents. Where will they find their outdoor entertainment if the current flow plan is altered to the detriment of the outfitters? Perhaps one way New York City could alleviate mistrust of what is going on with this study is to pledge right now, that the current releases will not go below what is already in place. Mr. Rush? Pete and Dan from the Army Corp referenced they hope for a win-win situation after the completion of the feasibility study. I certainly hope that's the case for everyone. Thank you.
My name is Steve Bretzik, and I'm here on behalf of Whitewater Rafting Adventures, my staff, some of whom have made it here for the trip tonight, my family, my community. I don't want to be a cynic. I don't think anyone in this room does. I don't believe that any of us want a negative impact on our livelihoods, our water, our river. A lot of people have spoken before me and they've said it wonderfully. I can't say it any better. You know, the rivers around here have improved. Black, orange. My son caught his first trout in the Lehigh River. Amazing in one generation where we have gone. We've heard words tonight, trust. Trust us. Should be protected. Not interested in changing anything, but there's no guarantees. And unfortunately, the old adage goes, we will prepare for war, but pray for peace. We want positive outcome. We want improvements. We want the study. We want to see what we can all benefit from. But as many have said before me, it can't not come at a cost of what we've all worked so hard to develop and have right now. So again, I will ask that no alternatives be considered that would negatively impact or have a net loss on the current flow management plan or the downstream recreation that it has created. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Ed Reagan. I'm a whitewater boater, I'm a whitewater canoeist, I'm a fly fisherman. I came up here from Northampton County. I make my living in risk management. The Army Corps of Engineers' main goal is flood control. Secondly now is recreation. New York City's goal and their Department of Environmental Protection is to impound as much water as possible in those reservoirs. Let's look at history. The Delaware River Basin Commission only exists because New York City had to be sued to let water out of their reservoirs in the 1950s. Yet we're here 70 years later. I live at the forks of the Delaware. That's the confluence of the Delaware, the Lehigh, and Bushkill Creek. The last three floods, 2004, 2005, 2006, were because New York City had its reservoirs at capacity, right? The Army Corps' goal, holistically, is flood management in the basin. New York City's goal is to steal as much water as possible from other people so they can keep their reservoirs full. Let's learn from our history. Have a nice night.
My name is Stephanie Sherman. I am an educator and I am from Pike County, Pennsylvania. I'm here because, from my understanding and what I've learned tonight, we are taking water from the Delaware River Basin and putting it into the Hudson watershed in order to alleviate downstream in the Hudson. I don't see Philadelphia here right now, and I'm concerned about that because they are downstream in the Delaware River. With that, a little bit more to add to that history, I teach regularly about a little project called the Tox Island Dam. The Tox Island Dam was supposed to dam the Delaware River for reservoirs as well. Thank you all for being here tonight because it is our voices being raised that preserves our water for everyone. And at this point in time, I don't see any other option other than the fact that sometimes the best course and best plan is to not have that plan.
Hey, I'm Jeff Skelding. I'm the Executive Director of Friends of the Upper Delaware River. We drove down here, a bunch of us, 2 hours tonight from Hancock, New York. Anybody ever been up there? I know a lot of you have. A lot of familiar faces in this crowd, and we focus, of course, on the wonderful angling up there that's been mentioned a few times tonight, but we also have a broad array of recreational activity as well, including boating and hiking and camping. And so everybody in this room knows, I think, that when you do something in one area of the watershed, you're going to very possibly have an impact in another area of the watershed. And that's in part why we came down here. But we also recognize that our folks in the Upper Delaware come to the Lehigh and vice versa. So we're all living in one watershed. When we came in here, there was a traffic jam out here. And my colleagues and I said, we wish we had an army up here. We wish we had an army in the Upper Delaware like you have here. Our position on this plan right now is to be open to opportunity. It's very early, right? It's not time to get too skeptical or too scared of this. Now's the time to take a look at what you can get out of it. And looking at this room, I don't think anything is going to get, I don't think these guys are going to sneak anything by you. There's like 700 of you here, okay, right? It's awesome. So again, we should have that. At the risk of my own personal safety, let me talk a little bit about New York City and Paul Rush up here, okay? So FEWR, my organization, maybe has dealt with the city way more than many of the people in this room. And we have an interesting relationship, right, Paul? Sometimes we're yelling at each other. Sometimes we're agreeing. Sometimes we want more. Right? Watershed management is complicated, right? It's not black and white. New York City's not doing everything bad all the time. Do we want more water for them, for our river? Yes, we do. Do we think they have that water to give to us? Yes, we do. Okay? Are we trying to figure out ways to get that water? We always will do that. Does New York City sometimes push back on us? Certainly they do. But the watershed management is complicated, and sometimes these arguments go better than other times. So I would say, Paul, in a moment I'm going to take a shot at you, but I will say that on the long history of New York City management, the Upper Delaware watershed, we've heard stories earlier that, you know, they were bad. There's some bad history here, right? The city, like all of us, have learned over 50 years of managing this watershed. And if we go back, way back, you could tell horror stories all night, right? But things change, people change. So in my experience, as Paul Rush has been here in New York City, you're going to get a fair shake. I will say that. And now I'm going to take a shot at you, Paul, okay? These dams up where we are, the New York City dams, artificially divide the upper watershed. And it's a real pain, right? We talk about what happens in the quote-unquote New York City watershed above the three big reservoirs, right? And then there's us, kind of where we live below those reservoirs. It's completely two different universes, environmentally, economically, culturally, socially, right? That's not really how it should be in a watershed, right? We all need to be kind of working together, right? And trying to blend this thing. And I think if you look at, again, the history of the management of the watershed, where we're at in the Upper Delaware, you know, it's light years ahead of where it was. We have taken a position for the last 5 years of trying to urge the city of New York to kind of come below the dams and help us out, because it's all one watershed, right? And often we will hear them say, well, look, you know, these are our dams. We care the most about what's above them, right? That's where we have to focus all our energy, spend a lot of our money, and we get that. And I find it really interesting tonight that Paul and his squad have come below the dams down here to essentially ask you for help, right? And I hope that perhaps can usher in maybe a new era of cooperation and collaboration with the city and every other watershed stakeholder in the Delaware Basin. So, thank you.
Hello, my name's Steve Chukra, and I'm president of the Lehigh River Stocking Association. For those of you who don't know about us, we're a nonprofit organization that conducts water quality surveys and environmental improvement activities in the Lehigh River in Carbon, Northampton, and Lehigh counties. And we're here tonight because we wish to participate in the scoping process. We want to ensure that any changes that are made to water management operations at Francis Walter do not negatively impact the Lehigh watershed. And in particular, we want to ensure that any changes made there do not result in a net loss to the quality of the Lehigh fishery, to the ecology of the Lehigh River Basin, or to the economic benefits that the Lehigh River currently provides to local communities in our area. And those are all the comments that I have for this evening. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Stephen Schweika. I'm a Pennsylvania state citizen. I live in the Whitehaven area. And a lot of times, I like to watch a football game, and I don't really care who wins because I have twice the fun. When one guy has action, I'm for them. The other guys have an action, I'm having twice the fun. It's not a lot of time here for small talk, so I just want to make some points and about the reason for this project is I think they say the salt water. They want to combat the salt water. Okay? And what happens when things change? Everybody knows it's raining a lot more. The last 3 years it's rained and rained. All the creeks in the summer never dried up. We're getting more water than ever, no drought. They're worried about drought. Okay, soil was they used 298 billion gallons, and so 96 billion gallons went to New York City. Okay, 96 billion. Okay, what's happening right now is things are changing with the weather. We're getting dumped with rain. The central part of the country is getting like drought, and it's going to be severe, massive drought. What happens when these guys, the project folks that are recipients of the water, start making a big pipeline and selling all that water to the central part of the United States? Okay, I like the idea of change. And there's been some people talking about reestablishing the dam at Whitehaven, the old dam, and making a 15 to 20 foot dam for recreation, for boating, and I'd like to see that happen. And I'd like to raise the stakes of this and have another $3 million put into that feasibility study and reunite Luzerne and Carbon County together with that dam and put a power dam in there to provide electric power for Whitehaven and emergency backup power, and put a fish weir in there so the fish can go down and boats could navigate the river, because the river is a navigable river. So, and that leads to the point that I was trying to make at, you gotta look in the past. In the past 12,000 years ago, the Atlantic Ocean was 400 feet lower. 8,000 years ago, the Atlantic Ocean was 20 feet higher in Philadelphia, okay? Things are changing, the icebergs are melting. What happens when the water really starts, water level raises? I'd like to see if the project goes through, I'd like to see them, I wouldn't mind seeing 10 more feet permanent all winter long behind the Francis Walter Dam myself. And, but I'd like to see whatever the fees are that Jack Frost is paying for water, I'd like to see get an equal amount of that, or even 1/10 of that, for all the money that is sold. If they make a big pipeline and pump all this water from upper New York State out to the Midwest, where they're not going to have any water because of the drought, then it's going to get worse and worse because of the basically cosmic conditions of the atmosphere. And that's, I just want to keep that in mind.
Wow. Wow. Amazing to see all these passionate people here tonight, and I thank you all for coming, showing support for the river. My name is Jeff Keim. I've been involved in creating the current plan that we have right now, the flow management, since the very beginning with the Army Corps of Engineers. I was representing back then the Lehigh Valley Canoe Club and the private boating community. Currently, I'm the administrator of a Facebook page group called Lehigh Lovers United, and it's a place to voice concerns and discuss the management of the Francis Walter Dam and unite all entities concerned with its management. Probably a lot of people I see are here tonight, and they won't be able to make it to all these meetings in the future, but through that page, if you voice your concerns and want to discuss this topic, I'm planning on attending all the rest of these meetings from here on out. And I will represent everybody, in the concerns that are, brought to my attention there on that page. So I just wanted to say that, join the Lehigh Lovers United and also the Friends of the Lehigh, because we're both involved in this project. So thank you everyone for coming tonight. It's really great to see this good turnout.
Thank you all so much. To get this many people out here, one big, passionate, and also respectful crowd, we really appreciate it. This is great. We couldn't have asked for anything better. What's that? No problem. This concludes the formal meeting, but a number of us are going to be around here, scattered around the room for any questions, follow-up discussions that some of you may want to have. Otherwise, have a good night, drive safe, and as someone else said, belated Happy New Year.